Yeah, that's sounding very organic. Kind of like Anjunadeep, All Day I Dream. Got ourselves some nice sounds going on. You've probably heard of artists like Lee Burridge, Tim Green, labels like Anjunadeep or All Day I Dream bring up this new and natural style of house music that's called organic house. And now you're really into it and you want to know how to make it. So in today's tutorial, I'm going to assume you're a complete beginner to Ableton Live and to the style of music, which is why I'm going to walk you through a empty Ableton Live session to a organic house track. So let's dive into the video. So you can see here, our session's completely empty as it can get. We have one audio track loaded and one MIDI track loaded. And now we want to start a track. We want to make some music, man. Come on. So where do we start? I usually like starting off from the rhythm and the main rhythmic elements. And I'd like to go through a few kick samples for this. And in this MIDI track that I've created here, I'm going to load in a drum rack. You can find this under the drums panel or the instruments panel under drum rack here, drums, drum rack here. I'm gonna load this into the MIDI track so we have our pads loaded up in this little window over here. Cool, now we want a kick, right? So I have a few kicks loaded in my Lotus Tunes Legacy Kicks Volume 1 pack. These are especially perfect for organic house. Just gonna listen to a few samples and load in kicks that sound different from one another. Some with a really sharp transient beginning sound. Sounds that I just like. Yeah, cool. So I have like about 4 to 5 kicks loaded up in this drum rack here. And then I'm going to select my loop region. I'm going to right click, make sure it's on 8 bars. I like to usually start off with a 16 bar loop. So I highlight this section over here, hit Control or Command, Shift M to create a MIDI clip. And so this window is going to pop up. Right click here, 4th bar, and start drawing in our kicks. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We could either do it like this. I'm going to delete it. I'm just going to draw on one kick, hit Alt, increase the velocity of the kick to 127. So we have the kick playing at its full volume. I'm going to select this guy here and hit Control or Command D to duplicate it. It's a bit of a workflow tip there. You can also hit these headphones here so we can hear our kicks. Now I'm going to highlight this section here, duplicate it to the end. There we go. Reduce the volume a bit so we have some headroom, some space, and this is going to be looped. I'm going to highlight that and hit Control L to loop this section here. So we have our kick going, right? Okay, that's a bit too quick. I'm going to reduce the tempo right in this corner to, let's say, about 119. That sounds pretty cool. So our goal is to create the core rhythm, right? We just want to create the basic rhythm first. So I'm going to group this track, hitting Control G, and I'm going to call these core drums. Okay, cool. So now I want the hi-hats. For that, I'm going to create a MIDI clip. So I'm going to click this drum rack here, first rename it to kick, and now hit Control, Shift, and T to create a MIDI track. And within this MIDI track, I'm going to load in a few hi-hat samples. And for that, I'm going to go into my Daydreamer Organic House Production Suite, into drums, one-shots, and just look for maybe a few hi-hats or shaker sounds. Yeah, just going to double-click this to load it in here. Now I'm going to highlight this section here, hit Control Shift M, the same we did for the kick, and you can see this piano roll over here. And since the hi-hat's always playing on every 8th note, every second 8th note, I'm gonna hit right click 8th note here, and C4 is our root note, right? Let's check that out. So I'm gonna solo the hi-hat here. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna play it with the kick, reduce the volume so we can hear it together. No, that's not how I want my hi-hat to sound. C3 is the right octave for this. So I'm going to keep it on C3. You can see I can pitch the sound over here, but I'm going to keep it on the original pitch, and that's in most cases, or in all cases, it's C3. Cool. So we want it to play on every second eighth note, right? This would be an eighth note, this one here. If we could change the grid, we could see the 16th notes, the 32, but I want to keep it on eighth because the hi-hat's always going to play on every second eighth note. Duplicate this, come on, let's go like that, exactly. Cool. And what I could do now is just stay on this track here and double click a few different shaker sounds. Oops, yeah, duplicate this. Yeah, this one's quite cool, but I feel like it's a bit long, so I'm going to reduce the sustain time over here and the decay. Yeah, I like this. Cool. I'm going to keep it at that for now. Rename this track, hitting Control R, and call this one Hat. Always remember to hit Command or Control S to save your projects every now and then, so you don't lose your progress. That would suck. Now I'm gonna create a new audio track, hitting Control T. Remember, we're still within the core drums, right? We want to create that basic rhythm. And we're gonna load in a few claps. And for this clap, I'm actually gonna work with audio, since MIDI doesn't give me the visual representation of the wave file. Right click, eighth bar, eighth note, and drag in our clap like this so we can actually see the wave form instead of the MIDI note. So I'm going to drag this clap to every second hi-hat here. Let's see how it sounds. No, that's not how I want it. I want it like this. Okay, not really satisfied with the clap sound. Let's see if we can find a clap that sounds a bit more loose. Yeah, this one's kind of cool. It's pretty tight, but I like the way it sounds. And you can see this clap has a pre-delay time of 7 milliseconds. So I'm going to hit -7 in this delay panel over here. If you don't see this panel, you might want to hit this D in the bottom right corner here to open the delay compensation panel. I think that's the way it's called. And you can pre-shift your sounds. So if I pre-shift it by 32 milliseconds, it would sound like this. You know, that's not what I want for this sample. That's a bit too much. So I'm going to hit -7. Cool. I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to take this clap, this section over here, and duplicate it. Right, so it's on every second fourth beat, right? On every second kick. On the second and fourth kick. So this is our basic groove, right? And now I am going to create another audio track, hitting Control T, opening this guy up here, and selecting another clap. So these ones tend to have a more higher frequency, sound a bit sharper, which is why I'm going to add them right underneath these claps over here and pre-shift it by -6 milliseconds. And I'm going to reduce the volume as well to mix it in. Let's see how it sounds. Cool, it sounds a bit fresher now, right? A bit more highs in that sound. Now I'm going to duplicate it. Duplicate this small section over here till the end again. So we have 2 claps now. Cool, cool. But I want another layer to the clap, so I'm going to hit Control T again to create that audio track, because I want a clap that sounds really organic, right? Like really loose. Oh, this one's cool, because I feel like it's really wide in the stereo spectrum, and these tend to sound really cool as a layer sound. So we're on -4 milliseconds here. -4, let's see. Oops, that was a bit loud. What's great with audio is you don't necessarily have to pre-shift the times over here. In this panel, you can actually take the sound, and you see we're always snapping on grid. We don't want that for clap sounds, which is why we're going to hit Alt while we're trying to drag the sample, and then we can go off grid to manually pre-shift each and every single clap, right? So that's pretty awesome if we want to do like really surgical edits like this. If I want the second clap to be shorter, I would just shorten the clap here. If I don't like the tail from this clap, I'd shorten it up here. For organic house, we're usually looking for claps that sound very tight, right? This is our first layer. And me personally, I like the clap when it's really tight on the beat. So I'm going to duplicate this little loose clap here. Right, till the end. Let's listen to how it sounds. Cool, so the first clap's a bit tighter and the other ones are a bit loose. And that's okay. I'm gonna create little pre-shift times for each and every clap, so the claps sound a bit different each time. I'm gonna delete these now. So this one's shorter, this one's a bit more loose, right? I'm gonna take this section here and just duplicate it to the end. So this is what we've got now. The same claps, but a slightly different tonality since we changed the length of every clap. And this is why I like using audio, because it enables me to have more freedom to change the length of each and every single layer. And what I'd like to do after that is commit to the layer. So hit Control T, and you can see this little section over here. In my case, it says external input. But we're going to hit that and hit resampling. And if we solo these 3 layers right here, so I'm going to solo these individual layers, you can do so by hitting the S button, hitting Command or Control, and then individually soloing your layers here and hit record input. So what I'm going to do now is record these claps into a new layer. Perfect. So we have 8 bars over here. Now we have all 3 claps within this new layer here. So I'd usually like to either mute or delete the old claps right here. And this is the new layer that we're going to go with. So we want to keep our session very clean, right? Clean and structured, not too many files and sounds all over the place. And then I can reduce the volume of the claps here. Cool, so we have our main groove established with the kick, the hi-hat, and the clap. Going to rename this to clap. Also going to hit into these panels, hit Shift and Tab. You know, Shift and Tab is one of my most used shortcuts so far because it enables me to move from this panel into this editing panel. You can just see the file in total over here. You can stretch the individual sounds from here as well, but I'm not going to get into that now. I'm just going to right click, rename the clips to claps. It's cool that we have the claps. Do the same here, Shift and Tab. Right click, rename hats, Shift and Tab, right click, rename kick. Perfect. So we have a really nice and clean session over here. Awesome. So that's it for our basic rhythm. We have our kick, hi-hat, and clap. Let's play that again. So what I'd like to do now is fill in the spaces in between that sound pretty empty. So we have a static groove here. We can add a lot of detail to it. And what I'd like to do first is add in a shaker, because shakers are really tight and consistent sounds. And to create a track without it being in this group, I'm going to hit Control T while having the group highlighted. So it's going to create the track right underneath the group here. And I'm going to call this Shakers. Remember, this is an audio track and you create audio tracks with Control T. And this is perfect if you have a couple of loops that you want to load in. And I'm going to go through the Shakers selection from the Daydreamer pack here. And I think there's this really nice and loose shaker somewhere around here. Yeah, 22 is pretty cool. I would like to use this shaker sound. And of course, I'm going to reduce the volume here and play it with the other sounds. So the shaker sounds a bit far on the right, and you can use this panning selection over here to pan it to the left. You can also use this utility plugin over here, which you can find under Audio Effects, Utilities, Utility, and pan it here using the balance knob. So I'm gonna pan it slightly to the left here. So it's coming out of the center, right? It's still in the stereo spectrum, the shaker, but it feels like it's not too far on the right side. That's why panning helps in this case. I'm gonna delete this guy here. This is our shaker loop. And there's a really cool trick I like with Ableton. You can double click the sound or hit Shift and Tab as I've previously showed you to move into this panel here. And you can change the warp mode not to complex. Complex is pretty cool for melodies, but I like to use beats for drums. And I'm going to change this warp mode to 1/16th. So it snaps to every 1/16th note here. And then I'm going to hit this one-shot mode over here. I'm going to reduce this panel to create a really snappy sound. Listen to the effect. You can even change it back to transients. I'm going to keep it right here because I like the way it sounds when it's loose. A really important element for organic house is having shakers, especially some that sound loose, some that sound tight, and you can also layer these shakers with each other. So I'm going to create a new track, a new audio track right underneath these shakers. Right click the sound, show in browser, so it automatically opens up the shakers folder here, and I can go through some other shakers, right? And I'm looking for shakers that sound really, really tight now. I'm going to go with this one. Just paste it in here, reduce the volume, and play this sound. Because this one has a bit of a different accentuation. Like every single shaker sound plays on a different note. Cool, I like both of these, so I'm going to select them, hitting this track and hitting Shift to select both, Control G, and I'm going to call this Shakers, right? So change the color, right click. I want the drums to have a similar tone. I'm going to choose this beigeish tone and assign track color to group tracks and clips. So the colors of all the individual tracks and clips change. Let's listen to what we have here. Cool. I'm going to reduce the volume of the shakers now. For organic house, you usually want the shakers to be complementary to the groove. And what I mean by that is you don't want them to be the primary focus of the loop. You want them to just give a bit of groove, give a bit of drive, which is why I like to start from 0 or minus infinity and slowly mix them in. You can close your eyes for this. Gonna increase the volume on the left, on the ones that are panned to the left. This is perfect. Now I feel like the kick is a bit too loud, so I'm going to do a bit of rough mixing here. I could also go into the kick and see if another one fits better. This one's actually cool too. So I'm going to go with either 20 or 22. I like both of these kicks. But we're going to keep it at the one we started off the track with. All right. What I'd like to do after I have the shakers done is move on to the tom groove. So I'm going to create another audio track by hitting Control T. And you can either also go into the loops here that I have in the Daydreamer pack, or you can also go into the one-shots folder. There are going to be a few tom sounds in here. This one's pretty cool. You can actually create your own grooves. So I'm going to just drag it in here, significantly reduce the volume because we just want the tom grooves to also be complementary to the rhythm and not fully take up the space, right? So that's cool. We have a pretty cool tom sound here. Can even create more variation. Switch this sound for a shorter tom and replace it with these ones here. You can also hit right click, choose a different space. And I'm going to add a bit of a high cut with this EQ that I have loaded on this channel. No, that's not too cool. Yeah, this one sounds better. Right click one bar and duplicate what we have here. We could of course add some more variation for the tom groove, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to keep it like this. Awesome. Shakers, tom, and the core drums. What I like to do when I have the shakers, the tom, and the core drums together is add in a few percussion loops. And for the genre of organic house, it's really important to use sounds that are organic sounding, right? So you want to use like natural instruments, something that sounds rather bongo-ish or like a percussive drum. So I'm going to go through my Daydream Organic House percussion loops folder and look for something that sounds somewhat like a natural drum, like a bongo, like a conga, something like that. Yeah, this one might do it. Or something like that. I'm just gonna hit Control and T, create another audio track, and add this one in here. Remember, we want to start off small, like minus infinity, and mix it in. I like this one. Could double click the sample here, change it to beats warp mode, again, one shots here, and change the timing so it sounds snappier. Okay, and if I'd want to change the loop up a bit, I could head into eighth notes here and maybe take out certain sections since I want the sound to be more crafted towards the way I like it to sound. Yeah, just gonna take this. Cool, gonna take this one here, duplicate it up and create another audio track and see. I actually kind of like this bongo or conga sample here. Reduce the volume and see if I can add it in the background. Do the same. Double click the sample, beats. Let's change it to 1/16 this time, one shot. Oh yeah. I'm not really satisfied with the tom groove that I've created previously, so I'm going to delete that. Sounds cool in some cases, but since I'm kind of lazy now, I'm just going to use a loop. So let's see if we can just add in some tom grooves that sound crazy good here. Yeah. Oh yeah. These ones are a vibe. The perks, we're going to loop those as well. Right click and give them this color. I'm going to call this perks. So awesome. And now we could go crazy. We could also add like pads or melodic elements. I find pads and these background melodic textures to be a great way to transition from the drum groove to the melodics. So what I'm going to do is head into this atmosphere folder and look for pads evolving or something like that. Yeah, this one's kind of cool. And I'm just gonna create another audio track, right? So just click on the perks channel here and hit Control T. So the track isn't created within the group, but it's created right underneath the group. And he already gave us a pretty cool color. I like to use blue for melodies, bluish purple. Gonna reduce the volume. And when we import samples like this, Ableton usually automatically warps them, which is kind of cool if you want to have sounds that are in tune to the BPM of your track. But since this sound doesn't have any rhythmic components to it, we're just going to unwarp it to keep it as clean as it can be. Sounds cool, but what else we got? Cool, okay. Just listening to whatever sounds coolest, whatever inspires me the most. I like all of them. Yeah, I'm gonna go with this one though, I think, right? Gonna unwarp it again. Oh, that's sexy. Let's see if we can add some delay or some kind of effect on top, because I'm too lazy to create separate return channels. I'm gonna keep it like this. So I'm just gonna change it to 4-bar mode, ping pong, and change it to 100% dry wet here. 100 is probably a bit too much. Let's reduce the dry wet here. Can we repitch the sample probably? Oh yeah, that's cool. Ah, nice. And you know what? I actually want to freeze this sample. I'm going to show you that in a minute. So I'm going to create a new audio track and solo this guy here. Hit resampling here, record input, and record whatever sounds are coming from this channel. Cool. So we have this sample resampled into this new layer here, and I just want this little section. So I'm gonna take this and Control D, duplicate it. Let's see how this sounds. I'm gonna increase the volume here. Select the whole sample, hit unwarp. We don't want it to be warped. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna take this small section over here and duplicate it to the end. Okay. We want to create like a little pad texture. Reduce the highs. Add some reverb on top. So the transitions are a bit smoother between the samples here. And I'm going to keep the original sample in here and reduce the main pad here. So this is the pad and this is the swell. Awesome. Save the project, right? Yeah, that's sounding very organic. Kind of like Anjunadeep, All Day I Dream. Got ourselves some nice sounds going on. I'm going to create a MIDI track now. Control Shift T to create MIDI tracks, and I'm going to make this one red. But remember, we want to keep our session organized, so what I'd like to do is hit Shift and Control G to group both of these tracks together, call them pads-atmosphere. Right now, I'm going to load in a diva or some kind of synthesizer. You can use the Ableton stock synth for this as well. There's a bunch of synths that you could use to create bass sounds or your unique sounding melodies. I could use my favorite synthesizer, which is called Diva. Find it under plugins, Diva, right here, and go through a few presets that I like. Let's see if we can find some nice little bass sound. I don't know. Just gonna hit in bass 9. Highlight this section here and hit Control-Shift-M to create a MIDI clip in this range here. So then this window pops up and we can start creating a bass sound. So remember, I reduced the volume a bit, chose a preset. This seems to be the right note to use because I feel like that's the key of our track, right? Let's see. Yeah. I mostly do this by ear. I want to have like a da-dum-dum-dum, a really simple bass groove, not a melody, but a groove. Da-dum-dum-dum. Yeah, sounds about right, but we're going to have to do some tweaking within the synthesizer itself. So I'm going to open up the synth and head into the main panel here and play around with these knobs over here. Close this guy up, double click, Command or Control A and Shift arrow down to pitch it up, or pitch it down in this case. I'll take this section, duplicate it to here, and delete the first one, because I only want it to be played on the second half here. Just gonna drag this here. See how this sounds. Maybe add like a da 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 da. Now let's add it here. Yeah, we can get really creative here and create velocity changes. Like this changes the intensity of the notes. So you have a bit of a accentuation on some notes. And paste it in here. You can also do this by using Alt, and you can see we're changed the velocity here. So either down here, or Alt and arrow, or drag it up and down here. Cool. And now we're going to duplicate this here. Change the cutoff a bit. Can also duplicate this diva layer and mute the first one and go through a couple of more presets. We want it to play right from here, right? Cool, and then we can do some fiddling with the knobs here. See if we can come up with interesting sounds. Yeah, this one's better. Sounds really flat and steady. Can also pitch it down an octave, so double click the sound here, Control A, and shift it down. See how it sounds, just testing it out, right? Yeah, I like this. Let's duplicate this. So last step would be to add a melody. So I'm going to hit Control Shift T again and see if we can come up with a small little simple melody, right? So I'm going to take the bass channel and put it down here, but I don't want to completely move it. I want to duplicate it, right? So I hit this and hit Control. You can see this little plus sign popping up here. And now we're going to just let go and we have this MIDI clip duplicated to the bottom layer. Call this melody. This one's going to be bass. I'm going to move the melody above the bass, right click, assign track to color clips. So the melodies are kind of a blue color here. First, I'm going to keep this melody so I can find the right sound. And I'm going to use Diva for this again and pitch up the sound by 2 octaves, right? So I highlighted these sounds, shift arrow up to pitch them octaves. So 12 semitones would be an octave. It's the same note, just at a higher level. That's how I like to compare it. I don't really like the sound though. Let's go into presets. Go for something like a pluck, like a really short sound. That's what I'm looking for. Let's see how this sounds. Straight out of the box. Pretty cool. Gonna take out the low end though for this sound because we already have a lot of low end in the bass down here, and drag these here. So we use this F sharp, right? Really cool function that we have in Ableton is to use the scale knob here, scale. Select F sharp, and since I'd like to compose this track in a kind of a darker vibe, I'm going to hit minor. Could also use major if you're looking for a happier vibe, and this gives you the notes that you can use in the F sharp minor scale. So I'm not going to start just drawing notes that sound good to me, I guess, right? You see this note isn't officially in the scale, but I kind of like the way it sounds. It sounds a bit happier, and if we switch to major, you can see that it's in the major scale. Oh yeah. What I'd like to do is duplicate this layer, maybe mute the old one, go into this melody here, and see if we can find another sound. Just gonna mess around with a few different sounds. Nah, this one's too dry. Oh yeah, this one sounds pretty cool. Sounds a bit oriental. I like it. I'm gonna stick with that. I want a bit of effects here. Down to delay, add a delay here. Put it on, keep it here. ping pong, add a reverb. You see I've saved a few sounds up here. This is a pretty cool function in Ableton Live. Otherwise I'd have to select the audio effect each time in this audio effects panel here. Gonna decrease the delay time here. Bit of EQing. You can also pitch him up here, so double click, shift up. I like that. We use a lower octave and then the higher octave. Sounds pretty cool. I'm going to delete the old layer. Oh, that sounds so dreamy. I love it. Really sounds like Anjuna and that All Day I Dream Lee Burridge type vibe. Simple, from scratch. Cool. And we could take it into a completely different direction by adding sounds that have a bit more character, some more natural sounding instruments, because this is organic house. So I don't know, at this point I just mess around with a few different sounds. Details I'd add more towards the end of the track when I have it fully structured, because I find like the details, the nitty-gritty tend to take me away from the creative flow during the track's composition. Yeah, I have this upcoming pack, it's called Azar, and it's full of oriental organic house sounds. Haven't released it yet because it's still in the working, but I have a few instrument sounds that might actually fit well to the genre of organic house. For example, this would be Narkey, so I'd like to add this here. Turn off the warping. Let's see how this sounds. As a transition sound, perhaps. Okay, so I'm gonna mixing, delay, and add ping pong. I'd like the last section here. Maybe take out some of the high frequencies, add some reverb of mine. Add it here as well. I'd even reverse the sound and maybe add it here. Cool. Really subtle effect in the background. Give it a bit of oriental vibe, oriental touch. Oriental. Yeah, it's cool. I like it. Let's see how it sounds. Increase the volume a bit here. Have ourselves a nice track going on. Really simple. It's really simple. You don't have to overthink it. Organic house is such a fun genre to produce. Okay, I'm going to give you a quick playthrough of the loop that we have going now. Okay everyone, that was it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to hit that like and subscribe button to have me produce more content like this for you. And yeah, feel free to check out the sounds on my website, lotustunes.com. You can grab the Daydream Organic House pack there, as well as many other small transition sounds. And stay tuned for the release of the full Oriental Organic House pack, Azar. It's coming out very soon, and I'm really excited to release this one. So cheers, thank you. Mwah. Love you, all the best to you. We'll see you in the next video.
Okay, bro, ya.